Hi, LeBron. How are you?
Great, great. Kimberly, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us. But before we get into that, I would
hmm
love if you could kind of introduce yourself to the group and maybe talk about kind of how you came into education originally.
Okay, fantastic, Kimberly. Hello, everyone. My name is LeBron James, the educator, not the basketball player. And I began teaching about 25 years ago. After graduating from UCLA with a degree in math, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And a counselor told me that there's not enough Black men in education, especially teaching math. So I decided to become a math teacher. So I taught for a total of 15 years. And the first 5 years, the kids were teaching me how to be a teacher. And then after I figured that out, then I realized I came into my own as a teacher. And what I realized is that, people looked at math as strictly numbers and a non-emotional subject. So I created my own philosophy called math is emotional because everyone has an emotional response to mathematics, and emotions relates to who you are, relates to your culture, it relates to your life experience. And so I try to always connect culture and life experience in my class so that the kids felt like they had some ownership and self-belief in terms of mathematics.
I love that. Oh, I love that. And, now like this project we're talking about here today, there's such a focus on social emotional learning, but you don't always hear people make that natural connection to math. So I
That's
love
true.
that
That's
that was
true.
natural for you 15 years ago, and we're still working to make that happen now.
Now,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Well, that feels like such a perfect lead into probably how and why you became the co-founder of MILO. Would you talk a little bit then about what your current work is and kind of how that connects to your experience as a teacher? And I love how you reference like social emotional learning in there too.
Yes, most definitely. So after teaching for 15 years, the last school that I taught at was a private Jewish school in Los Angeles. And in my interview, the rabbi said, LeBron, we know you know the math, but what do you know about Jewish culture? So I said, apparently not enough. What do I need to do? So they said, well, you need to practice Shabbat. You need to study the Torah a couple of days after school. And the light bulb went on for me that if you really want to teach kids, you have to be a part of their culture. You have to be a part of their community. And so that led me to go to Harvard because I said I want to create my own school for Black and brown boys around math and emotions around their culture. And then they said, okay, LeBron, you have to have maximum impact. You can't just start a school. They said, you need to train teachers how to teach math to Black and brown kids with a focus on culture. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. And so the last school I worked in, they gave me all their athletes, primarily Black and brown boys athletes, uh, uh, behavioral issues, and after working with them for a year, I raised their math scores by 26%. And so then they were like, oh, wow, this social emotional math is emotional thing is working. Then the pandemic hit. So then we had the pandemic. So everything went virtual. Then we had the George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter. I'm like, we have to do something. So me and my neighbor, who's now my business partner, Gary Mack, said, hey, let's create the same program online. Let's train teachers how to teach effectively online with a focus on equity and culture. Because I'd actually been an online teacher certified for the last 20 years. And so now it's in vogue. Now everyone's doing it. And every teacher in the country right now is a first year teacher. And so that's why we started Milo, because we saw what happened with Common Core and the challenges teachers had and the backlash they received. So now we said we want to be able to train teachers how to teach effectively, how to change your pedagogy, how to change your emotional response to students online so that you can be effective and so that we can provide high quality education to every kid in the country, no matter what zip code they're in. Because if you have highly effective teachers, you can now teach far more students than in face to face.
I love that. So many things about that. I'm sure are really connecting with our people here listening right now. The teachers feeling like a first year teacher, but maybe not giving themselves that grace.
Yes.
And so they're feeling really stressful. And I know when I went through your course, and I will talk more about that in a moment, you all modeled compassion that, we need to sort of take care of ourselves and be kind to ourselves as learners, and then do that with our students as well. So it's been so exciting to hear about this kind of experience, but then hear about your MILO method, where can you talk just a little bit more about your kind of plan for how to get students feeling engaged with online learning?
So what I do is I'm a practitioner of the work, not just a theorist. So as soon as the pandemic broke out, I offered free math courses online to any kid in the country. And so when I teach math, I always start off with hip hop music because I have to bring my culture into the classroom, and then I make a space for kids to share their culture. So whoever goes into a math class and hears rap music playing, nobody like, wait a minute, I thought this was a boring regular math class. I'm like, no, no, no. This is not a class. This is an experience.
Right.
See, for now, we have to create learning experiences for children. We have to be able to allow them to engage in an experience and to bring their full selves to the classroom. So what I do is, before I even teach math, I spend 2 or 3 days just talking. What's happening at your home? What's happening at the corner store? What's happening at the backyard barbecue? What's happening at the quinceañera? You know what I mean? So I'm letting kids tell me who they are, what they're about. And my job as an instructor is to then make the curriculum match their cultural experience, to affirm who they are. Because as a person of color in math, my most difficult part was my identity. I didn't see people who looked like me in the subject. So when people see me, they see an athlete or an entertainer. They don't see a mathematician. And so people don't understand, for our students, they first have to see themselves as scholars. They have to see themselves as STEM people, mathematicians, scientists. Once they see themselves that way, then they can do the work.
Sort of, you've been a bit of an instructor to me as well. Because I was grateful to be able to go through, I think maybe one of your first cohorts with the MILO method, right?
Most definitely, yes.
And so for everyone here listening, we're talking to educators about trying to help improve education in so many ways, improving equity, infusing social emotional learning, and integrating the arts. There are so many kind of big and innovative ways that we're trying to engage children in learning and engage their teachers in teaching. And so for me, going through the MILO method work, there were so many experiences I had where, even though I've been doing this work for quite a while myself, I was learning for the first time, or maybe having to relearn things I thought I knew. And so some of those areas for me were really around race and equity, and concepts and terms that I thought I had a pretty good handle on, that you all really helped me to see differently. And so a big one for us, and that this project is focusing on, is around culturally responsive teaching. And I know, for me, I was definitely confusing aspects of culturally responsive teaching with like multicultural awareness and social justice instruction. And so would you speak with us a little bit about how MILO is doing all that you already said of kind of engaging youth, getting them interested, feeling like scholars, really reaching them and doing this great online learning, but you're also doing so by really trying to educate the educators around these areas with race and equity?
Yes, Kim. So like I said, through the MILO method, we train teachers K to 12, all subjects, because good pedagogy is good pedagogy, no matter what subject that you're teaching. But what we realize is that in the online environment, students now have a choice of whether to log in or not, whether to turn their camera on or not. And so even though they were pretty much silenced in the classroom, they had to be there. They have this new form of power online. And the key to engagement and keeping kids engaged online is to have culturally responsive teaching. So it doesn't mean putting up a poster. It doesn't mean celebrating a holiday. It means that the teacher has to identify first that they have a culture and be aware of their culture and the triggers in their culture and the things that elevate them in their culture, and then be able to identify the culture of the students in your classroom. And then make sure that the curriculum, the responses, the assignments are in tune with the culture that they come from.
Mm-hmm.
So that what happens is in the majority of our schools, we have students of color, but when they look at the curriculum, they see no one who looks like them.
Mm-hmm.
When they look at the examples on the test, there is no mention of anyone who has the last name that they have, or the life experience they have, or come from the community they come from. So there's a disengagement from the content. So students now say, I reject that because it doesn't uplift who I am and my culture. And so once the teacher understands their culture, they can then connect with those students and share culture. And then that builds self-esteem in kids. It connects to the brain and allows for kids to learn at a deeper level. So being aware of culture and conscious of it and infusing it as much as possible is what we think about in terms of cultural responsive teaching.
Excellent. So you and I chatted a little bit about how one way to do that might be through the arts. And
Yes,
yeah, could you chat just a little bit more? You have a lot of people listening here today that are teaching artists or who are collaborating with a teaching artist to try to really integrate the arts into all kinds of subject matter.
right. I think now more than ever, we need the arts, especially in online learning. And
Mm-hmm.
so we even encourage teachers in the MILO program to use art, use music to connect to students. The first thing you have to do is to connect. The best way to connect is one through music and through art, allowing kids to express who they are. So, for example, when I would teach my math class back in the day, I would tell kids to create a form of art that tells me your relationship to mathematics. And so we'd analyze their artwork. Then I would have kids write songs, write me a song, write me a poem about this concept. Forget about what's in the book. Give it to me from your point of view in the most creative way that you can. And so that's when I was able to really to connect with students, and they saw an entryway into mathematics. So I think the arts allows for entryways into English, entry points into science, entry points into history, and it allows people to create community, which is the most important part.
I love that. So arts integration uh, infused with social emotional learning and
Yes,
leveraging good technology, we could say is culturally responsive teaching.
most definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We are so grateful that you were willing to join us here today, and best wishes in all the future adventures that I know the MILO team has in store.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. Keep doing this fantastic work. You're changing the world. Thank you.
Thank you.